Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare.
Well, good evening, everyone. I believe you just finished meditation, so let's just take a moment to bring the Buddha to mind and prepare to take refuge and cultivate bodhicitta. It's nice to just bring him present, know that he is here, always available, always present. And let us begin. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. All right, well, so good to be with you, even virtually. I am actually away to lead a retreat, so it looks like I am in a monastery in Ladakh. That's the background that we have up. I'm actually in the priest quarters at the Mercy Center in Auburn, and we'll be leading an end-of-year retreat followed by a New Year retreat. So no matter where we are, we get to practice together. That's very, very exciting for me. One of the gifts of technology, there's a lot of struggles with technology, but some of the things that are offered are pretty amazing, such as us being here tonight, cultivating our hearts and minds in ways that are meaningful, engaging in this path of liberation for the benefit of all beings. Pretty good stuff. Well, where we're at in the text and what we have been doing, I think is really going to come together perfectly for the end of the year. This is our last Wednesday teaching for 2022. And it just has come together without my planning, I think, for the practices that we've been engaged in and what will close up in this section of the text, I think will really offer us a roadmap for establishing a very multifaceted approach to engaging in Dharma for the new year. So pretty excited about that. We have already been working with understanding afflictive emotions, how they arise, how to work with them, the difference between just feeling a negative emotion and an actual constructive emotion. We can feel pretty challenged, but actually it becomes a constructive emotion depending on how we interact with it, what we do with it, how we respond. Or some things that feel pretty good can be rather destructive for us. And, how do we engage with these emotions, feelings, our way of attaching to people and labeling them. So this has been our path for a bit here. And last week we offered you the practice of just like me. I do hope that some of you did the practice, that you tried the guided meditation. And I think once you've done the guided meditation once or twice, just having those verses to reflect upon throughout the day, I think they can be really transformative, incredibly powerful. And so that it was to offer us an opportunity to really equalize the playing field in how we see people and how we experience them. And that is such a different place to come from when we're relating to them. So right off the bat, that's going to eliminate a lot of struggle. We also worked with purification, purifying the mind of afflictions, and doing a practice called transforming unskillful events. We offered the Buddhist teaching on the 4 thoughts for purification, 4 powers of purification. So we have these tools. The key, as we talked about last week, is implementation. So here we are at the end of a year. This is a great time to really reflect on implementation, why we do something, how come we would choose to do it, or why would we avoid it? What would be a practical way of putting these practices into my life? These are, things that are doable. That's I think one of the big keys. I was listening to Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, and she spoke on the topic of laziness, and one of the big forms of laziness is the idea that we can't do it. And the idea here is, yes, you can. You all have Buddha nature. Your Buddha nature is not any less than His Holiness the Dalai Lama's Buddha nature. We all have Buddha nature. We have it to, the unlimitless qualities of a Buddha, all available. It's just covered up. It's obscured with these afflictions. And of course, His Holiness probably has more access to it than we do, but you have just as much. And so knowing that, and knowing that now we have some very practical methods to work with those afflictive states that are obscuring our Buddha nature, well, I think we can be inspired, joyful effort, be inspired to engage in this path, knowing that it's a path, knowing it's a process, and setting ourselves up in a way that's meaningful. That's not, everything's going to be different, January 1. But rather, I am going to look at my life. I'm going to put the important priorities up there and build a lifestyle that will support my practice, and my practice not being limited to some prayers and meditation in the morning, but rather how I engage with others, how I work with afflictive states, how I proactively eliminate them, how I proactively cultivate more conducive states of mind and emotions. And so all of that, I think, will be laid out here at the end of this section of the text. Will give a few more methods. And I think we can talk about putting them all together. So let us get right to it. We've already done a lot of work with afflictive emotions, how they arise, and how they're really centered on a misperception, a way that we are relating to that person, place, or thing. And some methods, and we've even posted a whole series of antidotes that we can apply to afflictions. So let us now bring up the text. Well, I think I need to push the share button, right? Share screen button. There we go. Okay. So another method here. Imagination may be used as a skillful means to counteract harmful emotions. For example, as an antidote to lust, the Abhidharma prescribes meditating on the universe being filled with bones. Although the universe isn't actually brimming with bones, by having us contemplate the inside of the body, this technique works to eliminate obsession with sex. So, universe being filled with bones, I'm pretty sure the reference here is that seeing others, humans, animals, as for just as bones. The advice when I became a monk that my teacher gave me, working with lust, was to when I see people, just see them as skeletons. And that was really a very powerful tool, not simply for lust, but rather for equanimity. That, we're all equal in that sense. We all have a skeleton, and our skeletons don't look that much different. So the whole elaborative process of how someone looks and what we may think about them and the labeling and so forth, learning to just see others as just skeletons. And there's just a commonality that we can work with, especially with people that we're struggling with, so again, not just for lust. There's a lot of practices working with that, with monastic training, going underneath the skin, what's underneath the skin, and the pus and the bloods in the veins, and some ways that we can look beyond just an outer skin of a person and find a little aversion to our lust. And so lots of methods there to offset, something like lust. Well, I don't want to get into all those methods, but the idea that he's bringing up here is that we can use our mind in a very skillful way to develop our imagination in a way that can be really meaningful. And for me, the skeleton piece was beneficial, again, not just for lust, but for treating everyone more equally. And he also said, in cultivating loving kindness as an antidote to anger, we might imagine others being happy. And when cultivating compassion, we may reflect on their suffering. So our imagination is something that is incredibly powerful if we direct it in really meaningful ways. I was doing some prayers for a couple people today who are having surgeries. And, I could do prayers and hope they get well and include the medicine Buddha. And, just a good heartfelt prayer, and that's wonderful. But trying to visualize the doctor's, healing qualities, them getting better. I brought myself as best I could into an operating room and wanting to see that, that they are healing and getting better adds an extra oomph. And so that's for, others. We can cultivate that. And of course, it changes our hearts and minds as well. And we are adding to the potentials for their own healing as well. Scientists have noticed that when we imagine a situation, the same area of the brain is activated as when we actually experience the situation. This supports the Buddhist view of the usefulness of imagination developing wholesome and balanced mental states. This is the key to the transforming unskillful events meditation. Now, in that practice, we're bringing to mind a situation that we don't feel good about. And so we'll have the same sensations in our body, the anxiety, the fear, the frustration, whatever was going on. And so the same activity in the brain, that's all happening. And the beautiful sort of power of that practice is, with all those sensations, same activity in the brain and in the body, we can bring to mind how I would like to respond, what would be a healthy way to engage in this situation in a way that would be more beneficial. And there's an opportunity to link that healthy engagement with that sensation. And so practicing that, in that practice of transforming unskillful events, or including that more visceral imagination of the situation, bringing it to mind as best we can within the four opponent powers of purification practice, is just, it transforms on a level that connects with our neurons and connects with our body and those states in a way that can really transform how we interact with people. and difficult situations. So I strongly encourage getting to know that practice very well. Applying an antidote may initially make us feel deflated, but this is not detrimental. So I believe what's being shared here is a lot of people feel like we shouldn't have the afflictive states, that I shouldn't have got angry or shouldn't have got frustrated, or I shouldn't have been so anxious, whatever is coming up. And that is not helpful, to say the least. We are in samsara, these afflictive states arise. They of themselves are not the problem. How we engage with them is a solution. So we can have actually pretty unwholesome thoughts and feelings in our hearts and our minds and our bodies, and be able to take a healthy action by simply not acting on it, being aware of it, not acting out in a way that I would have in the past. That's actually growth. That's actually cultivating merit. So we have an opportunity here when we think about these antidotes, not that here I am having to do these antidotes, here I am doing practice, and I'm still getting, frustrated or resentful with people. The fact that you're aware that you are getting resentful, the fact that you are aware of the way that we're grasping onto them, the way that we're exaggerating those qualities, that's all incredible. And then applying an antidote that's skillful. So instead of being deflated, it's much more accurate. So you give it a pat on the back and just be comforted to know that you do have the capacity to apply an antidote. I would even go so far as to say that when we didn't apply the antidote, the idea, or actually the knowledge, that I acted inappropriately and I would like to engage in a purification practice or make an apology or transforming unskillful events, that is all merit. So we have incredible opportunity here, and it's so important to meet ourselves where we are at. So let me get into this paragraph here again. Applying an antidote may initially make us feel deflated, but it's not detrimental. For example, when we are arrogant, making the mind more sober is beneficial. However, if we are depressed, deflating our mood is not useful. We must evaluate our mental states, first determining if a destructive emotion is present or not, and if so, then choosing an appropriate antidote. So the point being made here is that, for example, he was saying that being deflated in this sense could be helpful if I'm feeling arrogant. How can I bring myself down to being one among many instead of know-it-all? But that same feeling of deflation could be detrimental if we're depressed. So we don't need to whack away at our ego. We need to recommend seeing our capacity, our Buddha nature, our qualities, and that this depression is just a moment in time, sometimes many moments in time that can stretch on, but it is temporary. And we have this capacity, this Buddha nature, and that the depression as it's arising, for me, one of the things that's helpful is to know that it's arising because of previous conditions and causes that have ripened. And I'm actually having the opportunity to clear some of my imprints. And so don't always need to fight it. I don't always need to apply an antidote to. One of the antidotes for me is to embrace that I'm having an opportunity to clear away and purify some difficult karmic imprints. And it's temporary. And then, obviously I can go away. Sometimes that becomes an antidote. I was once significantly depressed. I went through a divorce and was raising my daughter, and pretty shocking news came to me that kind of undermined what I thought my life was. What I just didn't, it was just undermined. I didn't feel like I had any ground to stand on. This was before I was heavily engaged in Buddhism. It was actually as I was just beginning the process and really learning to meditate. So we're talking about 1999. And the depression came, where it's hard to concentrate, hard to, do things, lack of energy, all the symptoms that come along. I was raising my daughter, and I was working a couple of jobs. I was going to school, and I was trying to function. And something that was really different was that it never felt like it would last. I never felt hopeless. I felt that this was a temporary thing, natural thing, divorce, difficulties, bad news, all of this has ripened. And I was working on how to accommodate. How do I accommodate for these sort of lack of focus, lack of concentration, things I needed to do? Back then, I got a little tiny laptop, and this was like that was still a fairly big deal for me anyway, laptops back then, that I could actually go work in the by my professor's office to type papers, where that would help me focus. And, just little things to accommodate the issues. So I was in problem-solving mode, even though the depression, it lasted a few months. But it never felt hopeless, and it never felt like it was going to, be who I am. And so that was a really different experience for me. And I'm so grateful that I had the beginning of these tools to really help me with that. So again, sometimes we feel like we need to jump on the antidotes as soon as certain things arise. And sometimes it's helpful. Other times not so helpful. And His Holiness was making the point here that we need to be skillful. We need to recognize where we are at, and develop a skill set within ourselves to work with ourselves in ways that are meaningful and to apply the appropriate antidotes. And that's going to be some hit and miss as we go through a process. But he's going to point out some advice here. So I'll pop that back up. Okay. Applying an antidote may initially, just read that one. There we go. In short, we learn to become doctors to our own mind, diagnosing our mental ailments, selecting the correct Dharma medicine, and then skillfully applying that medicine. So this is what happens over time as we get better at it. Again, hit and miss, and with practice, we become much more effective over time. Working with afflictive emotions requires a two-pronged approach. Okay, so working with them, two prongs, managing unwholesome emotions. So that's working with them as they arise. That's where we might be applying some antidotes. It might be allowing them to come and go. One of the ultimate antidotes is to understand impermanence and self-grasping. I am not my feelings. I am not my thoughts. I'm experiencing them. Don't stuff them. They can come and go on their own. How can I learn from them? They're beneficial. They're not something to shrink from. I can learn from them. I can grow from them. What are they telling me about myself? So not just, the direct antidotes, some of the antidotes then apply understanding this misperception of my self-grasping, my exaggeration, some insight to what's really causing them as well. And then the acceptance of them and understanding that they're a part of samsara, they're part of this human experience I'm having, and that they actually have arisen and can fade, and I can rejoice that this type of struggle I'm going through, well, it's just purified, and it's helping me grow. So in that way, very beneficial as well. There's even a practice within the Lojo mind training of when we experience difficult emotions or struggles, that we will take them on, that we, for the benefit of all others, may I be able to work with this so that I can be a benefit to all others, that no one else will have to go through this. I am going to be able to take this on for the benefit of everyone else who is suffering with this same type of mental or emotional struggle right now. Very powerful practice. Okay. Oops. I move my cursor, all these other little pop-ups show up except the one I'm looking for. So two-pronged. One is that we work with them as they arise. And then the second one is that we want to stop the actions motivating by them. So in other words, reacting to them in unhealthy ways, right? So there's also, I'm just going to read this sentence again. Managing unwholesome emotions and stopping actions motivated by them are important components, but they don't solve all the problems. We also need to cultivate wholesome emotions. Although we may not initially be able to call upon these positive emotions in the heat of the moment, gradually and diligently cultivating them in our meditation practice affects our temperament and influences our emotional patterns. The more familiar we are with these beneficial emotions, the less susceptible we are to harmful emotions. Developing constructive emotions is similar to bolstering our immune system. Cultivating love strengthens our emotional immunity to anger. Developing compassion prevents cruelty. Joy opposes jealousy, and equanimity averts bias due to attachment, anger, and apathy. So here he's offering, not just how do we work with the negative ones, but how do we cultivate these qualities, that these constructive attitudes, mental, emotional states. And what he's referencing here is the four immeasurables. So loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. These are practices that we cultivate, and it's kind of his analogy here, we get our immune system up. So if I'm healthy, eating right, and so forth, it's going to be harder to get sick and ill. Still can happen, but we're doing the things that will bolster ourselves. Likewise here with cultivating compassion, well, there's going to be less ill will. Cultivating loving kindness is going to be less hatred. Cultivating equanimity, less attachment and aversion. Cultivating this empathetic joy, less jealousy and envy. So one approach, right, two prongs, is working with the afflictive emotions and not reacting in unhealthy ways. And then here, proactively cultivating these qualities as the four immeasurables, these really, immeasurable qualities that will really transform our lives very proactively. Now, let's see where we're at here. Yeah, just another paragraph here. Reflecting on the benefits of having a particular wholesome emotion invigorates our efforts to develop it. For instance, if we contemplate the benefits of seeing sentient beings as lovable and imagine the good feeling that will derive from that, we will happily meditate on their kindness. This will cause feelings of gratitude and appreciation for others to arise naturally in our mind. To see the advantages of certain practices, we can ask ourselves, what is disrupting my inner contentment? We then see the negative emotions as the culprits and want to oppose them. With this determination, we will seek the methods to counteract those disturbing emotions and diligently practice these methods. So there's a lot in here, and let's just back it up a moment. So reflecting on the benefits of having a particular wholesome emotion invigorates our efforts to develop it. So this is key with pretty much, well, yeah, with all of the analytical meditations within Lama, the stages of the path to enlightenment. We generally start with, why would we do this? What's the benefit? What's the benefit of doing this? What is the disadvantage of not doing it? So really incredibly important to be very clear about this. And here he's offering us to really visualize and think, wow, what would it be like if, how can we imagine in our minds these things happening? So what would be the downside of me cultivating loving kindness, compassion, wisdom? Is there a downside? What would be the benefits? And then looking on the other side, what's really disrupting my inner peace? Is it that person, or is it my afflictions? And at some point we get the reality, it's my afflictions. Well, now then, instead of being mad at that person, let me be inspired to work with these afflictions, because the real enemy is the mental and emotional afflicted states, not the person. And then we're going to get real inspired. There's some freedom here, that I can be free of these. The key, though, is that we really need to support our practice. All of us here maybe can get this now, can be inspired. We're at the end of the year. We're about to begin a new one. And maybe I get an inkling that if I could adjust my mind to a more accurate way of engaging with others in ways that would promote more well-being, inner peace, resiliency, insight, whoa, wouldn't that be nice? Okay, that'd be great. Well, then, as we talked about last week, talking about it's not going to help that much. Becoming familiar with, that's the words His Holiness was using, becoming familiar with. And so that's going to become familiar with in our meditation, becoming familiar with as we engage with others, noticing these afflictions arise, becoming familiar with in the transforming unskillful events, really putting ourselves there, learning about this. And then throughout our day, being much more aware of even the temporary nature of feelings. And, just in an hour, we can have surprise, worry, fear, anxiety, excitement, relief. That can all actually probably happen in 20 minutes, but they come and they go. What is steady? What is something we can lean into? What is meaningful in terms of cultivating a more accurate way of understanding myself and my experience, understanding I'm having a subjective experience. what I'm pointing to out there as the problem is not inherently, independent from its own side, and the whole of the problem might have a part to play, but I'm bringing a lot to this, and how I'm experiencing it has a lot to do with my conditioning, my karma, my imprints, my attitudes. And so, full cycle, the way we transform our lives, start seeing things more accurately, is we work inwardly to understand how these labels and images and projections appear on people, places, and things that then trigger our mental and emotional states. And as we change that experience, both with merit and wisdom, virtue and insight, well, then we actually start experiencing people differently. People that were once annoying, well, not annoyed by them anymore. And just everything transforms. So that's the key to understand. It's not to say that difficult things won't happen. It's not to say that we won't feel physical pain. That's part of the human condition. But it's to say that we don't need to suffer because painful things happen or difficult things happen. Suffering, mental and emotional suffering, has much more to do with how we're relating to the difficult and even the joyful situations that we might become very attached to, and create a lot of emotional pain through our exaggeration and attachment or our aversion to things. And so there's a real freedom that arises when we cultivate equanimity, understanding this subjective experience, and that everything, whether I'm finding it pleasant or painful, is all opportunity to cultivate merit and wisdom, extract the essence of this life, grow, learn, understand myself. And then in the midst of struggle and difficulty, inwardly, we don't need to be struggling. We might feel some pain, might feel some sadness. That's okay. Sadness is an expression of love. And these are states that come and go. So here we are then with some approaches. We've given some methods around cultivating our concentration with meditation, to actively cultivate healthy, nurturing mental and emotional states like compassion, loving kindness, equanimity, empathetic joy, the four immeasurables. In the morning practice, in the longer version, those get recited every day. Excuse me. And then we have these practices very proactively of just like me, really understanding how others are just like us, trying to find happiness, trying to avoid suffering. We bring in equanimity and seeing their value. They all have Buddha nature. They're all struggling in samsara like we are. And it's their fears, insecurities, and their afflictions that are causing these actions that are unwholesome, just like ours have happened. And they're in a prison of samsara, just like us. And how can we be of benefit? And then instead of getting mad at them, maybe we can see that they're under an afflictive state and have compassion for their suffering and respond to their behavior appropriately, which could be boundaries, which could be, really having a difficult conversation, boundaries, etc. That, we're not doormats. Compassion is not doormats. We deal with the behavior without a mind of ill will, but with a mind of compassion. So this, just like me, is just, lays a foundation for this. And proactively cultivating the four immeasurables. And now we also have the purification practice, the four opponent powers of purification, or the short version, transforming unskillful events. So how do we put all this together? I remember my teacher, Geshe Gelsen, was just saying after he teaches the 10 non-virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind, and the 10 virtues. And I said, okay, so all you need to do now is stop doing those and start doing these and purify any of your negativities. You're on the path of that's all the virtue, the merit, changing the complete conditions of your life. It sounds so straightforward, right? And it is. It's straightforward. It's just not easy, especially when we are not making time to really bring them to mind daily, recognizing the benefits of doing so and the disadvantages of not. So here we are, end of a year. How do we put together a practice that's going to support us in this process of cultivating these qualities, avoiding these unwholesome qualities, and purifying? I mean, that's pretty straightforward. We have these afflicted states. We can purify a lot of them. Why not do that? Here's the unwholesome ones that get us in a lot of trouble, cause a lot of pain and suffering. Let's stop doing those. Here's the virtuous ones. Let's start doing those. So all of that is put into the morning practice that I do record every day except Sunday. So if you haven't taken a look at that, you might go along the guidance. We have the practice here in our practice book, and I do a short version or a longer one, depending on people's time. And the idea is, if you like practicing together, we can do that. Or you can, learn it yourself, have it for yourself. And then, in the evenings, a purification practice. So that's a start and a finish for the day. And then throughout the day, how am I going to check in and be mindful of these afflicted states when they arise? How to be on guard? And so it's really nice to build in some time, and it doesn't have to be a lot of time, couple minutes, stop, check, remember. I carry a little notebook with me, noting some things that have arisen and how I'd like to do better with them. I'll pause. I try to do it 6 times a day myself I have a very short mantra I do to help purify and remember the biggest affliction that I'm working on. So that was a practice we talked about a few weeks ago. I try to have one in mind that I'm bearing in mind. And so that brings it to mind throughout the day. And then I also have some opportunities to pray for people. And that's a nice practice. I just had a long drive here to California, and in the car, I can bring into mind a few people like I mentioned earlier that had surgery and some other issues that were going on. And what a nice way to fill some time is to really cultivate the wish for them to be well and to engage in some practice there. And so as we wrap up a year here, thinking about what we've learned, and what I invite everyone to do is to take a little time and see if you can't build a structure in your day, one that works for you, not something that's radically different, but can I build a little time on morning practice? Can I build in some check-ins? When would be a good time to purify in the evening, and dedicate merit? That's the evening practice, purification and dedication of merit. So for me, I often think, well, there's, resistance because lots of things going on. And we want to kind of take some time more and think, here's a day that will never come again, right? I don't know how many I have. I've been handed the path of wisdom and understanding, a path of total liberation, practiced for over 2,600 years, refined, offered to me the keys to the kingdom, the guidebook. I just need to use it. And I don't need to do it perfectly, and little bits at a time. And some days I may be totally off, but that just gives rise to being totally on another day. Really having an opportunity of, for me, the idea of falling down doesn't mean give up, it means get up, you know. I've been doing this a long time. I've been in and out of practice, and I know that it's all temporary, that today's a new day, and every day I am born again. I am becoming something. What I am today is because of my past. What I'm doing today is creating my future. And every day we can be cultivating our future. On that piece also of practice, a lot of people will think of their practice as the prayers in the morning, the meditation. Meditation is critical because that is what's going to bring our mind available for mindfulness, for attending to what we do. So very critical. I didn't talk much about that, but that is, of course, a key component. But the word gom, to become familiar with, and for meditation, that's the Tibetan word. Become familiar with our afflictions, become familiar with our antidotes, apply them, practice them. So your practice is being nice to your coworkers and struggles and those family members that are sometimes difficult for you. Those are your practices, you know, not just on the cushion. And so maybe you didn't meditate much in the morning. Well, you have time to practice now with the person in front of you. That's your practice. If you didn't don't have time for a full session, take a little time at lunch, sit for 5 minutes, just meditate. Little bits. Keep planting seeds, keep growing seeds. That's the deal. The way this unfolds is over time. And if you don't plant the seeds, they don't grow. What we water grows, what we nurture grows. And so the idea here is that we can use the purification practice to weed out the garden of afflictive mental and emotional states. We can plant the seeds, the 4 measurables, and we can be mindful, on guard, of when to weed, when to water. And so again, very straightforward, but we have such an inertia of habit and seeking temporary pleasure that the delayed gratification of a practice that comes to fruition can seem, not as connected as, something that seems fun to do right now. Which doesn't mean we don't do something fun right now. We bring a mind of, how's this beneficial to my life? There's a lot of fun things to do right now, and giving myself a break to take a break can be very beneficial. Being mindful of that. Being gentle with yourself. That's what I'm trying to encourage here. At the end of the year, instead of making big thoughts of change, let's make incremental ones that allow you to water and nurture wisdom and merit in your life. And can these skills be a part of that process? And of course they can. One of the things that may help you with recognizing the benefits is to recognize how much better you are today than you once were. You're already reaping the benefits. We tend to think about how far I need to go and not even see how far we've already come. All right, well, I think I have spoken enough, but I am so grateful that you are here this evening, that you are cultivating these qualities for not just you, but for the benefit of all beings. I do invite you to have a discussion after the teaching here tonight. if anyone had some experiences with it, just like me, I think that would be really wonderful to share. And of course, our current topics, maybe talk about some real practical methods of incorporating structured that really promotes that morning practice, the check-ins in the evening, in a way that's meaningful for you, and see how you can support each other in the process. Sounds good. Then we should, go ahead and dedicate the merit that we have already cultivated in our time together. So dedication, our motivation, always bringing a good motivation to what we do, and then a dedication, just really are the two bookends for all that we do. So let's take a moment to bring to mind the wish that our time together today, the merit and wisdom that we have cultivated, will be of ultimate benefit to all beings, and that we will be able to utilize the merit and wisdom we've cultivated through our lives to actively engage in a path that liberates us from our own obscurations and afflictions, and that we realize our Buddha nature. And let us begin. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha Om Tare